What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. This is T Word, the People's Champ, here with my co-host Q. Today, we're going to be talking about Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr., Errol Spence, and Terence Crawford, and all these potential fights that just might happen. But before we get into the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We appreciate your feedback. All right, so we're not going to delay. Q, I believe you have a clip ready. Let's go ahead and get that going.
Yep. Clip from Talk Sport in the UK. Kyle Sauerland, who is Chris Eubank's promoter, was on there today promoting a fight he's doing this Friday night in the UK, as well as talking a little bit about the rumored fight that may happen in June between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr.
Do you want him to fight Ben in the summer, as Eddie Hearn's suggesting?
You know what? What I want is for Junior to put things right with Smith and to fight Ben. How that works, time will tell, and it won't be long because there's things coming. He wants to fight in June.
What fight?
And exactly, and currently Smith is on. That's
Chris
we
Eubank
do not
does.
have. I can categorically say right now we have not had one formal proposal from Matchroom's side yet. We have had a discussion, but we are aligned right now to fight Smith at this moment in time.
Well, what does Chris want?
Chris right now, he's a fighter, so he concentrates what's actually on the table. What's on the table right now is Liam Smith. So that's what he's focused on. And spoke to him last week. He's in Vegas.
So is Eddie talking
training
rubbish?
in the gym there. He's not talking rubbish. He's doing what Eddie does. He's putting it out there. It's a big fight. He's trying to promote his guy. I get it. Whether Conor Benn's got a big heart or not, that's not my business. My business is the Chris Eubank Jr. business.
Would you let your fighter, Eubank Jr., go in against Conor Benn, Calla, even if at that time in the summer, Conor Benn has at that stage still not proven his innocence?
I would look at two things. I'd look at the first thing you'd look at is what's the testing on the fight. That's the first thing. What is it? It's got to be a sanctioned fight, obviously. That's clear.
Sanctioned by who?
Well, it has to be sanctioned where the governing bodies allow it. That's clearly in the UK a big issue at the moment. That's not our issue. That's their
so if
issue.
it was sanctioned overseas, you'd let Junior fight
That would
Ben.
depend. That would depend where it is and who the sanctioning bodies are, and most importantly for me is who the testing bodies are.
All right, so there you saw some thoughts from Kyle Sauerland that started really because Eddie Hearn at his press tour that he's doing for the Anthony Joshua Jermaine Franklin fight was asked about the potential of who Conor Benn is going to be fighting in June. They said that they are nearing an announcement, and some of those options were Kell Brook, Manny Pacquiao, Chris Eubank Jr., as well as two unnamed American fighters. One of them had been at one point rumored to be Adrian Broner, but we know that that's not going to be the case because he recently signed with Don King. But there are a couple of other guys. I would probably say you need to keep a lookout for potentially Alexis Rocha as well as Mo Hooker. I think those are probably the two other guys that Eddie did not name that potentially could be guys that Conor Benn fights this June. What's your thoughts, man?
When somebody has a situation with PEDs or they have some stuff with drug testing, I'm always a little bit leery of seeing them get in the ring, and I'm a little concerned about their opponents or whatever. In this particular case, I'd like to see some more clarity on Conor's part. But as far as him versus Chris Eubank, I didn't like this fight from the beginning because I didn't like that Chris had to come down. I was concerned that for Conor to be able to come up to a certain weight, there was some stuff going on behind the scenes, some dirty stuff. So I didn't like the fight to begin with. So if it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that. I'd like to see Conor fight some welterweights and get back in that picture. If he's going to be a clean boxer, he's going to do what he's supposed to do. He wants to get his name right. Fight in your weight class, try to work your way into a title shot, and then let's see what happens from there. So it's not really a fight I'm interested in seeing under that umbrella alone. I don't like to see dudes moving, because you're talking about a middleweight moving down to a catch weight to fight a welterweight.
Well, that's the thing. This fight, reportedly, the rumor spinning this week was that if the fight is going to happen, it's going to be at 160. There's not going to be any catch weights involved at all.
Okay, so we're talking about a 147-pounder going up to 160. I have no interest in seeing that. Last time we seen that, didn't Kell Brook get his eye socket broken?
Yeah, but I would argue with you that Kell Brook put up as much of a fight as, I don't know. I mean, most. I'd probably say there's only probably two, maybe other guys that had a better performance against Triple G than Kell Brook did in Triple G's career. One including Canelo.
It's boxing, though. It ain't horseshoes, man.
No, it's not. It's not. But, you know, I mean, I guess the thing that you would say in that situation is, do you think that Chris Eubank is Triple G? No.
I don't. But I think that a guy who is also coming off of a situation where whatever supplements he might have been using, the good and the bad, now you're having to take a whole different regimen. You're not even able to really know what your body's going to do without whatever you potentially were taking that wasn't banned, because you're trying to stay extra clean. And I think it puts him at a disadvantage. And I don't like it. You know, just my experience with weight management, things like that. This just wasn't something I was very interested in. It was laughable when they first announced it, and I was kind of glad that it was called off. And I thought that we had heard the end of it, because I felt like Conor had a long road to get back, but it looks like Eddie's going to try to keep it on the table as long as possible.
Yeah, man. I mean, for me, I'm about entertainment value. I'm not a person that has strong feelings one way or the other about PEDs when you talk about supplements, when you talk about diuretics, when you talk about things that help you lose weight. I have a stronger feeling and opinion when it comes to things that help you with your performance or with stamina, or things that are going to help you have an abnormal amount of muscle gain or capacity to retain strength. Things of those nature are kind of the things that I feel a little bit more strong about. But I mean, I think boxing fans in general, I think we have to be about who we are and what we're watching, because a lot of the same people who may have strong feelings about Conor Benn's situation are the same people that were cool with Deontay Wilder fighting Luis Ortiz after his situation. These may be some of the same people that may even be big Tyson Fury fans, when Tyson Fury never even served any kind of a ban or suspension for, I think, what was it, nandrolone is what he tested positive for, which is clearly a performance-enhancing drug. So, I mean, I can see the angle that a lot of people have taken when you talk about the weight disparity. But ultimately, if two guys are signing up for a fight, it's two big names. It's going to be an interesting lead up. If it's two guys that are willing to sign on the dotted line and agree to terms, who am I to stop them? It's certainly a fight that I would watch.
Yeah. That's probably a Saturday. I might be doing something else. I ain't gonna lie to you. I might be watching basketball that day or something. And to your point, and then we can move on to the next half of this particular topic. The thing about diuretics and stuff like that, why I kind of have strong feelings about, performance enhancing or banned substances, I think is a better ballpark to put this in. A lot of diuretics are used to mask banned substances that are performance enhancing. And that's where it gets a little tricky, because then you have to create this super long list of things that can't be used for masking agents, but can be used to help manage weight. Because some people just need a little extra boost to keep their weight under control. I get that. But you get into so much minutia with it that I feel like it would just convolute an already murky water. So keeping everything out is kind of the way to go. And like I said, from an entertainment standpoint, sure, there's that rivalry thing, and I think that that's the biggest push behind it, was the fact that there's that rivalry.
Fathers fought, and they didn't like each other, and the sons were gonna fight, and they don't like each other. Yeah. I mean, my only thing with it, man, is I don't know that there's a whole lot of great options for Conor Benn when it comes to people he can fight, just because of the way that the landscape of the welterweight division is set up, where almost all of the best fighters at 147 and at 154 are all happen to be on PBC and happen to be aligned with the Showtime network. And we already know that for the most part, almost in no case is any Matchroom fighter going to get a great opportunity to fight a Showtime guy, at least not unless they're in some type of a mandatory status. I mean,
Right.
It's kind of the ironic part that started this cold war, so to speak, between Matchroom and PBC. The only two fights major that they did between two true, a Matchroom fighter and a PBC fighter was on two occasions. Kell Brook, when he came over to LA and fought Sean Porter, won the IBF title. A year or two passes by, and then Errol Spence becomes his mandatory. He goes to the UK and fights Kell Brook. Those are the only two instances where a true Matchroom fighter has fought, a PBC fighter. So,
yeah. And I mean, that's, we'll kind of see how all of this plays out. I'd rather Conor start to try to go down that path and work his way back up the welterweight rankings because he's still ranked pretty well.
Yeah, he's number 7 right now with the WBC after his reinstatement.
He can put himself in a position to become a mandatory for what I think in the next 16 to 18 months is going to be some vacant titles, no matter who wins it in the next few months and if there's an undisputed or not. That being said, we're going to segue into the two welterweight champions, Terence Crawford, the WBO champion, and Errol Spence, WBA, WBC, and IBF champion. Potentially everything is back. So my understanding is that Steven Espinosa has expressed that they never really stopped talking. It just wasn't a priority for either fighter. They were exploring other things, potentially Keith Thurman for Errol Spence, WBO mandatories for Terence Crawford. Now it sounds like things are heating up because there was a mandatory order of Alexis Rocha. Otherwise, there will be a purse bid. If I'm not mistaken, that time just expired on Friday or Saturday. So at this point, Terence Crawford either needs to just wait out a purse bid or he's going to have to go ahead and pick a fight with Errol Spence and try to figure that out. So I'm going to throw it to you first, and then I'll bring up the rear.
Yeah, man, I think that ultimately this is like the last gasp at this fight as it stands. Current conditions, both guys, quote unquote, being at the peak of their powers, or at least still in their primes. Because I think once you slip this fight up to 154, I don't know that that's going to be the best, most even matchup between the two guys, because you're going to be talking about a career welterweight who was, a guy who in his Olympic cycle was fighting around 151, 152 pounds against a guy who started his boxing career down at 135, where he became, a champion for the first time. So if you're asking those guys to fight at 154, while it's a fight that everybody's going to watch, and it's a fight that I'm going to be interested in, and I will still watch it, it's not going to have the same pizzazz and the same historical meaning that it will have if they're able to make this fight happen in June. I surely hope that they can. Boxing needs this fight. Boxing fans deserve this fight. We've waited a very, very long time for this fight, and you've heard me say on many, many occasions, T, this is a fight that I've been speaking on and been talking about realistically since 2019 at the latest, So, for us to be 4 years down the road, these guys are still in the division, but have not fought each other with, alternative route after alternative route after alternative route for whatever those reasons are. I surely hope that this is a fight that can happen, and I hope that we don't have any major snags, whether it's a sanctioning body ordering something or, there being some external issues that we don't foresee.
I mean, honestly, the only thing I think could get away at this point is just dollar amounts, whatever. I think that's the only thing that'll stop it. And there's a significant segment of the boxing population that's okay with this fight not happening if they can't come up with the money side, if they can't get that settled. Everything else should be off the table. The sanctioning bodies have really shown us over the last 12 months that they're going to allow them to figure it out. Because while they've ordered mandatories, they've given backdoor opportunities to circumvent mandatory fights to allow them to figure it out. I mean, Errol Spence probably should have had an IBF mandatory last year. Yep. Terence Crawford definitely. And contrary to what people are saying, the WBO mandatory is not 18 months, y'all. It's 9 months, and they can make exceptions to give the champion longer. But they could actually order that 9 months. They decided we're going to give Terence Crawford as long as necessary to let him get a chance to unify with Errol Spence. So they did their part. As of late, their back's kind of against the wall because now the 18-month time frame has come. So they didn't really order this thing early to say, Alexis Rocha, you're next. That also for Errol Spence, the WBC finally pulled a card. Hey, we want you to fight somebody and defend this damn belt. You've had it since what, 2019? Yeah, when he got it from Sean Porter. The IBF has been kind of stringing Boots along, kind of just leaving him out there, and he finally got an interim shot where he could really press the issue. The next thing you look at is the WBA. They've jumped through hoops to allow unification while they liquidate belts. You know what I mean? So I think that the sanctioning bodies have played every single card they can to give them time. So like you said, this is last gasp at this point. We have to get this fight, and we have to get it set in order. Now, let's go ahead and shift that part of the conversation to, let's say they are working on it. When do you project that we could see this fight happen? I'm thinking sometime in June. What do you have in mind?
Yeah, man, I think ultimately there's two things probably working here at the same time. And we've talked about this off air before, but are they working this fight as a way to launch the new streaming platform merge between Showtime and Paramount Plus? Is that a realistic option? I think it's the biggest fight left in the summertime that's, rumored to be, being made, because they're obviously not going to be able to do it by, Davis Garcia. Garcia would have probably been the better fight to launch that new platform with, because it's a more crossover mainstream fight that has, a little bit more casual fan appeal. But that's a fight that's already inked and going to be happening, here in a few weeks. That's not enough time for them to get that all, signed and tied up. But as far as the fight happening in June, that is a realistic timeline if possible. I just don't know where the framework is as far as, the development of this merged app, and if that's something they want to test the market with as their first major, pay-per-view on that platform. Because I think that they may try possibly to do it like they did the Terence Crawford, Sean Porter fight, where it's a thing that you can only get on the streaming platform to get people into, if they don't already have, the Paramount Plus merge show app. A great way for that network to try to get some of those boxing fans to realize, we have some pretty decent content here on Paramount Plus. Maybe you'll stay a little while after the fight is over.
Yeah, I mean, that's potentially it. So without clarity, I'm just going to use my tech background to try and figure this out and reverse engineer it a little bit. What I think is going to happen is they're just going to take all the Showtime content out of the app, and they're just going to phase that stuff out slowly and just put it into the Paramount app. So I don't think we get a new app that we have to get from the App Store. We're going to see that Paramount Plus app rebranded, just new skin. So everything, because if you go into the Paramount Plus app now, I can't remember if you told me you're a subscriber or not, but I have it.
I am.
Okay,
yeah,
so
I don't have Paramount Plus. I have Showtime. I don't have Paramount.
Okay, so Paramount Plus, you should be able to get a trial. I want you to check it out, and then we can revisit this, because I'd like to get your thoughts when you see it. There's already some packaging at different points inside the app where you could purchase from inside. You could get MTV add-on, a BET Plus add-on. You could add things inside of the app already as a purchase. So let's say you pay for Paramount Plus and it's $12.99. For $3 more, you can add the BET Plus access. So that content's already in there. You can add Showtime within the app for another $3, so it's already there. So what you see sometimes is when you click on the Showtime program inside of Paramount Plus, it says Paramount Plus with Showtime. So I'm thinking we might just see a skin. So the merging it over shouldn't be as hard as we might be thinking. It might be simple because it's just moving the content over. Now, what you just said is something I hadn't really considered. What ESPN did, you can only get this fight if you buy it through the app. I don't know that Showtime, after having the knowledge of what happened with ESPN and people really having a problem with it, I don't know if I'd be as ambitious as that, because even with BLK Prime, remember at first they said, you got to get the app to get it. And then you were able to just buy it through a browser. So I'm thinking the smart money is to stay away from exclusivity like that if you're trying to push people to try this. And then if they like it, maybe you put some bells and whistles in for people to try. I don't know. But definitely see if you can get a trial, man. I want you to look, and then we can come back and talk to the people about it, because I think it's a point worth exploring for the future of boxing on Showtime.
Yeah, definitely. And then I will say that, it's kind of, a little bit of a concern, I guess, when you talk about this fight having taken so long, is that, we're talking about 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Errol was in his late 20s. I think Errol is 32. So he would have been about 28 then, 29 or so. And Terence is now 35, but I think he's going to be 36 this year. Yeah. So, realistically, these guys are starting to get towards the end of their careers. And unfortunately, what we don't want is what happened with Floyd and Pacquiao. Now, obviously, that is 10 times higher up the scale when you talk about draw, appeal, and demand. But the same kind of things are at work here when you talk about, a guy from Top Rank who couldn't get a fight with a guy from PBC or from Showtime, and multiple reasons as to why the fight didn't happen. And then finally we get the fight, but it's at a point where neither guy is who they were. So the matchup is not as great as it could have been. And that's the one thing that I surely would hate for boxing fans, because that's the thing that's keeping a lot of people from staying as boxing fans, is the fights that we really, really, really want to see and deserve to happen just don't happen in a timely fashion. And we just saw another great example. I mean, we get to the 10th hour with the negotiations between Fury and Alexander Usyk. The fight looks like it's going to happen. They got a date penciled in. They got a block on the stadium. Yeah. And then in the last 5 weeks before the fight happens, the announcement is off. So it's unfortunate, and it happens too often in boxing. Too often we don't get the fight when it should happen.
Absolutely. We're definitely, back against the wall in that regard. And I think that the more money's getting involved on the fighter side, it's made it much harder, because you got to think about it. When it felt like, this is going to suck for me to say, but I'm keeping it real with y'all. When the fighters were getting ripped off, fights were getting made. Mm-hmm. Don King was making everything happen. Bob Arum, when he, back in the day, he was making everything happen. But now that the fighters have so much control, and all of us as fans, we want them to have control. The issue that comes with that is now, because these guys definitely understand their value, the money's going to get in the way a lot of the times. So we have to find what's going to be that balance. And unfortunately, as fans, we actually lose out. I'm not saying I want to see fighters get ripped off. What I'm saying is, when we empower the fighters to control their income, understand that they're going to sometimes talk their way out of fights or price themselves out of fights. And you could look at that with Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, to some degree, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, and some of the other fights. We almost had it with maybe Ryan and Gervonta Davis, but they were able to get it done, and we're 3 weeks out.
A lot of sacrifices had to be made for that fight to happen. And that's ultimately what ends up happening, is that, you have to make enough sacrifices for these biggest fights to happen. And if two guys are not willing to make sacrifices on both ends, typically the fight doesn't happen. And sometimes it only takes one guy, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's only one.
And in negotiations, you get what you can negotiate, not necessarily what you deserve all the time. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices if you really want to get in there and fight. So I was struggling with the title for this one, but I think I got it, because we talked about all the fights that could not happen. Yeah. Deal or no deal. That's the title. So we'll love to get you guys' thoughts. This has been T. There's Q. This is the Mic Check Podcast. Until the next time, we are out. Peace.